Hi everyone, I'm Shanae George. I'm a psychotherapist. Thank you for joining me in today's episode. If you are new here, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and share this video with anyone who you know needs to hear these conversations. If you're looking for a therapist or you want to join my community, I will leave everything in the description bar. Thank you for joining me and my community in making wellness a daily practice. Let's get straight into the episode. KEISHA, thank you for coming today. How is your mental health?
Oh wow, we're just going.
Yeah, we're just gonna go straight in.
It's good. It's really good. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Hasn't always been, but definitely I'm in a really great space.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Lovely.
Yeah.
Lovely to hear that you're in a great space. Congratulations on everything that you've achieved with the recent Mobile Awards that you won, that your group won, should I say. What was that like? What was that?
It was amazing. We've had like a really strong comeback. We got really back together in 2010 or 11, and we've been like fighting ever since to kind of like get our name back, the Sugarbabes name back, which we came up with when we were kids, and that was a lot, and it was really hard, a lot of start and stop. So to be able to, in the last 2 years, come back and, as I say, shut down Glastonbury and really just mostly have a good time. All of these things are just icing on the cake, but we feel like really humbled by it. It's still surprising to us. I feel like sometimes we're like, who us? Like, and I like that about us. But yeah, it was a nice moment. Mm-hmm. But yeah.
I love that. I want to bring it back a few years.
Okay.
Age 13, when you first entered into a girl band, Sugarbabes. Talk to me a bit about how the name came about, because you mentioned, you know, when you were younger, it was the name you thought together. Mm-hmm. How did that name come about, and what was that like at age 13, entering into a girl band?
Well, I've known Mutia since I was 8 years old. We went to the same primary school together, and it was so organic because Mutia would go to the studio after school, didn't tell anyone. Siobhan was doing the same thing. We're all from Northwest London. Siobhan's, I think, from like East Coast area. Me and Mutia were from like Kingsbury, Wembley area. Mm-hmm. And we were individually, I was more so focused on the acting side of things. Like I loved doing that, but I loved to sing with my friend at school occasionally. So one day she was like, hey, come to the studio with me, but to keep me company, because people don't believe this, but Mitchie was a very like extreme introvert. I was a friend who was like the chatty patty.
Oh,
and yeah, and I think she was recording a song with Siobhan that day, and she was just like, can you come along, keep me company? And so my job that day was literally just to support my friend. I went to the studio, I think it was right before my 13th birthday.
Wow.
I was sitting there just reading a magazine while they were working, and then the producer came up to me and was like, I hear that you guys sing in school. And he asked me to sing something, and I did. I think I sang like Brandy, Angel in Disguise or something. He wanted me to sing something by SWV. I did that with Mutia. And then he was like, do you want to record a song with the girls? And I was just like, okay.
Wow.
Because I didn't really, I mean, I loved like singing, of course, but I didn't, this was before like X Factor and all of those things. So there was no aspirations to be famous as such. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I was like, all right, fine. Went home, I was like, Mum, I recorded this song. And she was just like, oh, okay, well, it's like, can I go back tomorrow? That was it. And then from that point there, our manager, his name was Ron Tom, he is Jamaican, and we were surrounded by so many yardies, so many like, just like the culture. It was predominantly a black team, and we were doing R&B music, and we were being called the Sugarbabes all the time. And we were like, yeah, so here's the thing. We have our peers, this is not cool. We're like Sugarbabes, but not babies.
Okay.
So they dropped the babies, and then we just went as that. And then people from the industry heard our demos, and then it happened really quickly after that.
Wow,
So, yeah.
That's incredible. And I don't think I've ever heard that story or heard you share that story before. Yeah. Let's rewind. Okay. You're being asked to sing when you're come to support your friend, and you've been asked to sing. What was that like for you? What was going through your mind at that time?
I don't know. And it's so funny because I feel like I've always been like a confident little girl when I was younger.
Yeah.
I now know that I'm like an introvert, extrovert. So depending on the atmosphere. So clearly it wasn't that day. And I just was like, okay, but mainly I think because I was getting my confidence by Mutia being in the room. So because I was so used to singing with her and she kind of gave me that like nod of approval, I was like, all right. And I just did it. But of course, not thinking that I was, I guess, auditioning at that point. Yeah.
Oh, wow. And so after you did that, you sang, they loved your voice, you recorded your songs. What happened after that?
And then after that, it was about like development is what they called it. And we were surrounded by loads of adults and we were in the studio every day, just kind of being allowed to create our harmonies. And not many people know this. There's a soul singer called Donny. And Donny was there in the very early stages and he helped basically us with our sound and our harmonies. And you recognize a lot in us, like where we naturally sung. And so we would build our harmonies based upon really his direction. And from there we were doing shows. And all the feedback at the time was exactly the same, which is they keep looking at the ground, they're shy, they never smile. And by the time a label came to sign us, they kind of liked that about us. And we did smile, but just not on camera. So it wasn't really cool then. And all of my teenage pictures, like if you see us with our friends, it was like we could be laughing and as soon as the camera comes out, it was just like, and it was just the way we were. And it was really nice because the industry embraced that and there was no one really doing that at the time, even though we didn't get what the big deal was. And they embraced that, and I guess that's where we got a lot of our credibility from in the beginning, just being very different to what was at the time.
Wow. And for me, this is like a full circle moment because I grew up on you guys, like listening to your music. I just showed you the video of my mum and daughter dancing. So I grew up listening to your music, and to see you here is such a beautiful moment for me to be a part of and to kind of be in your presence. So thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Has there been any, when you were at that age, you know, starting a girl group, were there any highs and lows to your career?
Oh, wow. In the beginning, I felt like it was mainly just about us doing something that we loved, and I just loved singing. But then I had a lot of trauma happening right before I think it was right before the first single. So we spent like 2 or 3 years in development, and in between that, I was sexually assaulted and kind of kidnapped after school. And so I think that kind of gave me PTSD, but it wasn't diagnosed. And then I literally just had to go straight into the world of just like, I don't know, like the fame world basically. And I was able to push it back quite a lot and just throw myself into the music. And I think it helped because it was a distraction, but I think that it wasn't really helpful in terms of just how I regulated my emotions and stuff. So yeah, it was kind of like a bittersweet moment, I guess. And yeah, we didn't really have the struggle that some artists face where it's like you have a lot of failures. When we released our first album, I remember after Siobhan left, Mutia and I got dropped. So Siobhan got kept, and then Mutia and I were basically told, like, basically you're dropped and you're not very talented or anything like that. And we were calm, surprisingly. And within 6 months, all of a sudden, we were just back again, and it was with a big #1. So our start was very, very smooth. We didn't really hit much hurdles until later on. So I think any hurdles that were faced, it was probably like more emotional stuff in the beginning rather than to do with our success.
Wow. How did you manage to suppress your emotions, or how did you manage to kind of put that at the back of your mind and continue to pursue, you know, what you love doing?
I would say that it really was a gift from God. I've literally, since I was a kid, I've been able to kind of box things and just get on with it. And my mum at the time, because this was right before my GCSEs, and emotionally I was all over the place. I wasn't able to take my GCSEs. And by the way, please take your GCSEs because it's not guaranteed that life will work out. But yeah, I didn't take my GCSEs, but what I was enrolled in was like a program, and it was almost like therapy. And I was listening to jazz music while they would talk to me about history and the arts, and like I would go out and I would paint, and I became a very good painter. And that was my education until I was able to legally, I guess, leave school. And yeah, it was private tuition as well. I feel like that really helped me to regulate some of my emotions, because I was able to, again, it's the arts. It's something that I was, it has always been like a blessing to me to be able to express myself in that way. Yeah.
I love that. And creative therapy is a form of therapy. And as you said, you became a great painter. You're a great singer. So I guess you were channeling that energy of your creativity as a form of therapy. And it was also your healing.
Yeah.
I love that. I love that. How did your mum perceive you when you said, when you went into the girl band and, you were doing shows, getting booked, traveling? How was that like on your family life?
So my mum and dad haven't come from the industry. My dad was in the sort of boxing world. So I grew up, in that space in the 90s where he was really close with Lennox Lewis. So I knew Lennox as like Uncle Lennox, and I was around that sort of thing. That was the closest thing to like fame or whatever that I'd experienced. But aside from that, like, they were really normal. And my mum, I don't think my mum realised. She was like, well, I think she wants to go and sing after school with friends. I just literally don't think she fully understood or grasped like what it could have been. And even I remember my mum like going into like meetings with the girls' parents as well. It was exactly the same with their parents. And just not, everyone was like, well, I guess they're going to be on TV. Oh, you're going to be on TV? Okay. Oh, wow. Did not have a clue, it was like whatever we wanted to do at the time. And that's kind of like how it was. And my mum told me very early on to not tell anyone. So my dad actually didn't know that I was actually in the group until the video drops on MTV.
And what was that like?
I mean, people were just like, what's happening? But I think mum had her reasons very early on as to why she was like, we do not speak on things before they actually come into fruition. So yeah, that was probably like some of the best advice she ever gave. And I'm glad she did, because there were some people who were happy and to this day have been happy. And then there's some people that have not been completely very kind or, so I'm glad that I didn't tell those people too early. And
how do you deal with people's opinions of you, especially when you're in the creative industry, the music industry? How do you deal with that?
Honestly, in the beginning, really badly, to be fair. I think that I immediately had a defense mechanism. So I immediately walked into every situation, literally just on defense. Like, they're probably thinking this about me because the press used to like be like really hard on me. And so I definitely went into every situation like, right, I'm going to show them that I'm not bothered. And actually inside I was bothered. But as you get older, or at least from my personal journey, I've realized that the more vulnerable I am and the more myself I am, like the better it is just for me. Like, and so nowadays I'm more inclined to, I think it's with age as well, I just don't care, because I have to live with myself. I have to basically, look myself in the mirror and be accountable to like my nieces and my nephews and stuff. And that's all I really actually care about, that I'm making sure I take accountability where I can. But opinions and characters, I mean, to this day, like I saw a couple things over the last couple months, that have been written that I'm just like, that's really odd that they do this in like 2023/2024. It's odd. The old me would have been really upset, and every journalist would have been met with like a stone cold, I don't trust you. But now I'm actually really open book, and I have literally nothing to hide, and I'm proud of myself. So
I love that.
Yeah.
And it's almost as if you're embracing who you truly are as a person. And I guess one thing that I love about vulnerability is that a lot of people feel that when you're vulnerable, you're going to get picked on or you're going to get shamed. But being vulnerable, you become more stronger within yourself. And then that allows you to become the person you are meant to be.
100%. And I think even when you're vulnerable, I feel like there is some truth to what you're saying, because I do think that people do try to come after you, but I think that I would rather them do it and me just be myself, because I trust that I can handle those situations. Whereas before, it didn't also help that I was in an environment that always told me to keep quiet about everything. So behind the scenes, I had so much support from the team, you know, the people who I was in the band with. So whenever there was a bad article, it was just like, just ignore it. It's yesterday's chip. We know chip paper, you know, we know who you are. And unfortunately, my silence, I still have to pay for that, the price for my silence all these years later. And that's quite frustrating, to say the least. But I think that you just have to just know who you are and just be yourself, and actually don't care, because when we're at home, when you're going through like real life stuff, it actually doesn't matter. It's just a job. So yeah.
And I know you've spoken a lot about the music industry and how harsh it is on women in particular, and what you've gone through in regards to systemic racism, and kind of how you've got it more harder or harsh compared to the girls in the band. What was that like?
Okay, so right. So I think that the reason why I'm taking so long to kind of like ponder this, because I feel like there are two different ways of obviously looking at it, because I grew up in the 90s where you had girls who looked like me being very successful. So, you know, Mary J. Blige, Lauryn Hill, Foxy Brown and Lil' Kim were like the sex symbol rappers and stuff like that. SWV, mainly American, but I could look in the UK and see the girl band Cleopatra, you know, the Honeys. Like, I saw a lot of that and with success. So I've always felt confident within who I was and my appearance. When I then got into the industry, and then I just felt like there was a particular attack on my character, I didn't really understand it as such, because I felt like I was always getting blamed for things. No one ever asked me any questions, and even if they did and I kind of cleared those rumors up, it would still just naturally be the disposition of, well, it must be this. And then it didn't also help that when people had left the band, or when I came out the band, there are just things that were said publicly that may have been taken out of context, or, you know, just for the sake of a journalist wanting to make it sound a little bit more dramatic. You know, that didn't obviously help either. But it was my first experience of just really understanding that there is such thing as, like, there is definitely, you know, they say there's no like smoke without whatever they're saying. But no, there is. People can literally wake up and choose violence. And that's one thing that I learned. And it was a really hard time. But like I said, I think that it bothered me less back then, because I had a facade of protection. Like, I don't care. Maybe it did bother me. Maybe inside, it was like, you know, but I think that when you're successful, you can kind of, remember I told you about the box, like I can put it in a box and just pretend it didn't happen. But I think that when you see the aftermath of actually what it does to you, and you have that time where you're sitting down and you're kind of going through the motions, and you're like, oh my God, this has profoundly affected me. That's when you really feel it.
And at what point in your life did you realize that, okay, this is really having a profound effect on me? I maybe need some help, or I need to speak to someone where I can talk about how I'm feeling and talk about, you know, how I'm being treated in this industry.
Well, I love therapy in general, and I've been doing therapy really since I was a teenager, so since the incident happened to me. So I've always been an advocate for that anyway. But I do think in 2009 when I departed from the Sugarbabes, I think that's when for me I was like, oh my gosh, this is real. Like this is, because it affected everything. And like I said, to this day, you know, I try not to like harp on it, but it does affect certain things. I definitely feel like I have to go in and rewrite a lot of history that's not even actually true.
Wow.
So that's not easy. And it's not fair. Mm-hmm. And at the same time, I'm also being very protective over other people because I don't want at all to like put them in the limelight or make anyone look bad. Like there's literally no history of me talking bad about any members, any people that we worked with previously. Like there's no history of me actually going in on people because I really believe that your character over time, and also, first of all, I'm not a victim. Those experiences are the best thing that ever happened to me. It made me just a better person. It made me have like more empathy, more understanding. I'm an extremely self-reflective person. So you know how like people go home and they critique themselves? I critique everything about myself, and not physically, but my insides, because I actually want to authentically show up and be like, yeah, that is exactly who I am. I would hate to post things to be someone, even on social media, and in my private life, people are like, nah, that's not really how she is. Yeah, it's about making like myself proud of myself. But yeah.
And even you just sitting here listening to your story and hearing about you and what you've gone through, you're such a lovely person and you're so humble with it as well. And it's so lovely to kind of feel that from you and get that energy from you. What has therapy, okay, if you was to name one thing that therapy, that you've learned from therapy, what would that be?
I think telling the story without reliving it.
Ooh, talk to me more about that. That is so powerful.
Because when anyone talked to me about like my past or certain situations, I would literally transport into as if I was reliving it again. Yeah. And I had to really learn how to forgive myself, forgive others, and then tell the story from a place of being healed. And that's really hard because I think it takes a lifetime. I don't know if people are just like, oh, I'm healed from that, because anything can trigger those things. But I think that when you have a full understanding of what you've been through and what it was, and you take the positives from it, I think that's when you can like authentically be like, you know, talk about it and not feel like you're gonna go crazy.
That's amazing. I love that. And you've got a lot of fans, a lot of people who love you, a lot of people who look up to you, including myself. For someone who may have gone through what you've gone through, being sexually abused, and they may be struggling to go to therapy or struggling to maybe speak to someone about what they've gone through, what advice would you give to someone?
Oh my goodness.
I know that's quite a big question.
Yeah. I think it's really difficult because what works for me may not work for another person. But I think that having a relationship with God is like key. I would not have made it through any of the things that I'd gone through if I didn't have that one-on-one personal relationship. There's only so much your therapist can do. There's only so much like self-help books and all of that can do. I think it's a real, sometimes these things are like literally so spiritual. And for me, that having that source of like to lean on and that avenue where I can just like have a real conversation. And I have real conversations with God. Like literally. I'm not out here like thou art Mary or whatever it is. I'm like, hello, here's what I'm feeling.
I love that.
Yeah, I have like real conversations with God, and you know, he reveals himself to me in many different ways, even when I'm not really trying to hear what he has to say. He will find me on social media, he will find me on YouTube. There's so many things that he'll do. And I would just say to anyone, like, you know, really just seek that relationship, because I think people will fail you, you'll fail yourself. And then at the end of it, you kind of have to be like, right, what do I do with this mess? And that's when you give it to him, and then he kind of clears it up. But it is a process, and just like try not to be so hard on yourself.
And I guess it's a journey as well, you know. We all go through our ups and downs, our traumas, things that really reshape our mindset and kind of reshape our world and the way we view things, the way we view people, the world, and even ourselves. Has your journey with God changed throughout your life and kind of what you've gone through?
Oh my gosh, yeah, tremendously. I've always been so God-fearing. I've always been like, you know, the girls will tell you I was the innocent one, believe it or not. You'd never think so. But I was like the goody two-shoes, I should say. But I think I was like really religious. I started off really, I think I got like, my relationship with God started as almost like a massive fear of him. And I didn't know about grace or anything like that. And so it was very like, I'm following the rules. But yet I feel like as a person, I was probably still gossiping, still being catty, still all of those things. And I think as I've grown with him, I've known him to be a friend. It's gone from like friend to like when my dad died, it went to like more the father. And yeah, that's my G, like that's my, with all due respect, like that's my center of everything. And I also am always not very zen. And so people like me need the Lord, need to stay in, you know, because there are just too many things like that happen in my day-to-day life where I'm just like, oh gosh, yeah, I'm someone who needs it, because I can be really like reactive and emotional, because I just wear my heart on my sleeve and I'm just a ball of emotions, you know, and I try my best to like, well, when I love people, like I really do put myself out there, and I feel like sometimes when there's like, I feel betrayed, I just, it really affects me badly. And so, yeah, I need to keep that.
And the journey with God always changes, you know, and
always,
as you said, you know, you have that conversation with God, like, God, hello, like, what's going on here? I'm feeling this emotion. I was talking to my friend about it the other day, where we were saying we've got to be honest with God, because God knows our heart already, so we can't come being fake and putting on a facade.
Oh, I know.
You know?
And by the way, I was trying to be fake the other day with him, and he interrupted me during my prayer time and was like, first of all, you're not going to leave this off the list. And I was like, oh, damn, he can see. He knows, you know. And people like really make faith seem like it needs to be that difficult, but it's literally the very small things that allow us to walk the walk as best as we can. And I may not get it right all the time. I say this and I could do something crazy in the future, hopefully not. But you'll know, even if I do, like my next move is always going to be to like pull it back.
And I guess it's about the battle between your spirit and your flesh.
Oh my gosh,
and knowing, you know, is this something that I'm doing because of my flesh or my ego, or is this something I'm doing because God wants me to do it? And it's always going to be that battle, you know, because we're not perfect.
Ego, by the way. It was my ego that wanted to say, well, first of all, like, because I'm like, and why me? And why, you know, just, you want to defend yourself. But why am I going to defend myself? I'm just going to clearly like state, you know, take some accountability and be like, you know, guys, human mistake here. And then just move on. And whoever doesn't take that, that's their problem. It's not mine after that.
Yeah. You mentioned about your dad passing and how faith has been so helpful and leaning on God during that time.
Yeah.
And I know we connected due to you watching Femi's interview, and you kind of resonating with what he was saying. And I was like, when I saw your name, I was like, yes, please let me interview you. And then, you know, we was able to connect. What was that like for you, losing your dad?
Oh my goodness. It was like the most difficult thing I've ever had to go through. I think that whatever you think it's going to be like losing a parent, it's just not that. And you can never be prepared, and it's not, it's like the worst thing in the world, because you actually feel like you've lost a part of yourself. And I think for my personal journey, I've always been a daddy's girl. And it's me, I've got 4 older brothers, and I'm the baby. So you can imagine how close we were, like the only girl. And not having him there, my dad was like very road. Like he didn't play no games. He spoiled his princess. But him not being there, it's like the protection automatically. You just feel like, oh my God, what if something goes left? Like, who do I go to? And that's why I mean, like, where God stepped in and was like the father figure. Like I instantly felt filled with protection and warmth. And but yeah, no, it was horrendous. And when you lose someone, it brings out the worst in other people too. And so I feel like those who I thought were gonna probably step in or that we would lean in with each other completely went the other way. I think one of the hardest moments was that anyone who wanted to say something to me or be mean to me or whatever it was, they, off the back of his death, because he was so protective, decided to do it during that time. So it's not been easy. I've had to really try to go through a lot of forgiveness, because everything in me wanted to hold a grudge after his funeral. But yeah, I'm still going through the process. Like Father's Day is never fun. But what I found is that I've never seen so many people losing parents after that fact. And I honestly have never cried so much. I cried probably like for a month straight, and I didn't actually think I could survive it. And I was definitely done with music. I had never felt that way before. I was like, I'm never singing again. And then I realized the connection with me and him was because he loved music too. I didn't want to hear music. I didn't want to sing anything ever again. It was a very close call for me. But I've been able to support other people who have lost parents and who feels it knows it. Like that right there, like, oh my gosh, I don't want anyone to go through that.
I love that.
Honestly.
I love that so much. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I love, how you've still got that connection there with him through your music and helping other people. Yeah.
It's coming up to like 3 years. And there's still things like, I can do pictures now. I can look at his pictures, but I don't like when certain songs are on.
Okay.
And I'm not really, I'll listen to bashment music, but I can't really listen to revival, old school reggae, that kind of thing. That takes me to another place. So it's a process.
And I guess it's, as you said, it's a process and taking steps every single day. But you're here today and, you shared with me. So I appreciate you for doing that. And thank you so much.
Wonderful mummy.
Oh,
she's
shout
incredible.
Out to mummy.
Yeah, she's incredible. And just like, I've got her and she's always been my solid. So yeah.
And,
grateful.
at times when we've gone through a loss, family matters so much, and
100%.
Having that support system and people to lean on, people to cry with, people to go through memories with, that's always that helping stone for
and
things.
He knew I loved him, and that's one thing I'll say, like, love on your parents, love on your parents, because I don't have no regrets. I don't have one regret. Like, he called me like 3 weeks beforehand and he was just like, I know that you love me. He's like, no matter what, like, you're one person that I know that loves me. And I was like, Dad, this is so random. And I spoke to him about like how he would feel if I had kids. There were really profound conversations literally weeks before he passed away, which all now makes sense. So he knew I loved him, and I had so much respect for him. He, I never gave him a hard time. I just was like his little princess, and that makes me happy. And by the way, brothers, I know this is no shade, because they're probably going to be watching and being like, well, we gave him a hard time, but he loved us all, know. And but yeah, you want to have that with your parents. 100%. If they're still alive, you want to just give them good days. 100%.
Yeah, we all need our parents in particular and our family. I love that. Thank you so much.
No, of course.
What can we expect from you and Sugarbabes in the future? Anything up and coming? Any surprises for us?
Yeah, I mean, we've got loads of shows in the summer. We're working on new music now. I think that our mission in life quite early on was just to make timeless classics. I think for any artist, your aim literally should just be that in 20 years, like, you can still go out and do shows.
Oh, yeah.
And I think now they don't push that enough, so everything feels like you have to rush it. But we're totally happy with putting out music as and when we feel like it. When we released When the Rain Comes last year, there was no like conversation about, oh, we're going to do a single. We were just in the studio and we thought, you know what, this is a vibe. Let's drop it when we do the O2.
Wow.
And obviously we did the O2 and it did much better than what we actually expected. We were like, oh, this was just a vibe we were feeling. But yeah, we just want to continue, number one, having fun. It's important to us, and we are in a really good place with each other, and just having each other's back, and having our schedule work for us this time. We are independent, and loads of people are like, you've done all of that being independent.
Amazing.
Like, yeah, we've always been invested in ourselves, and even over the 10 years where we were trying to get the name back and all that kind of stuff, we poured all of our money into it. We were shooting a music video off of our own back, and we just want to empower other people to do the same, to really just like believe in themselves and to create art that actually feeds people into people's life, makes them feel good, and just staying true to ourselves.
I love that.